Hey guys, welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today I'm going to be trying something a little different on the channel where I'm actually going to be reacting to someone else's content for the first time. I usually do my own lists or my own reactions, but today I wanted to take a look at ESPN's 5 hot takes in the NFL coming out of Week 11. These just seemed like really interesting topics, so I want to talk about them, say if I agree if they're a hot take or not. This was written by Dan Graziano over at ESPN. I have no clue who that is. I barely watch ESPN these days. But let's get into these hot takes and see if they make sense or not. First hot take is the Detroit Lions are going to win the Super Bowl. I do not view this as a hot take whatsoever. I don't know how you could not view the Lions as the favorite to win the Super Bowl right now. Let's just take a look at some of the other contending teams right now. The Chiefs, of course, have been the favorite all throughout the year. They just lost their first game of the season yesterday against the Buffalo Bills. And, even last year we were saying they looked kind of vulnerable. Even though this year they have an incredible record, it still feels like they're not playing that great of football. Well, a big reason of why the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year was Travis Kelce. He was pretty good in the regular season last year, but clearly looked like he was missing a step. And then playoffs came around, and he just flipped a switch, and he was back to being an all-time great player. Are we sure Travis can do that this year? I think Travis Kelce's really starting to show his age. He's, significantly worse than what he was last year. And I just don't know if he's capable. It's hard to doubt him, but the guy is 35. I don't know if you can just pencil him in to go back to being an all-time great player. And that's what the Chiefs are going to need. They're going to need Travis Kelce to be a big-time playmaker in the postseason. When you just take a look at the skill position players on this team, D-Hop clearly is a shell of his former self. Rashee Rice ain't coming back. We don't know about Hollywood Brown. Juju's kind of just there. They need Travis Kelce. He is the X factor for the Chiefs, and I just don't know at this point in his career if he's going to be able to carry that big of an offensive load. It's hard to doubt the Chiefs, but right now the Lions just look like a better football team. You got the Bills, of course. Even though the Bills got a big monumentous win over the Chiefs, and I do have Josh Allen as MVP, I cannot in good faith pick the Bills to do anything. I cannot trust them to get to the Super Bowl, just looking at how the Chiefs have psychologically owned them. So the Bills, I kind of have to believe it, I have to see it to believe it with the Buffalo Bills. You got the Ravens, of course. They're really up and down. They have great weeks. They just lost again. They're now at 4 losses. They had a pathetic performance against my Steelers. My Steelers didn't even put up a touchdown, and they lost that game. So the Ravens, you just don't know what team you're getting, and I think that really stems from the coaching. John Harbaugh is one of the most overrated coaches in the league. Todd Monken, an offensive coordinator, is a fucking joke. I don't understand why everyone just thinks Todd Monken's this great play caller. No, he's not. He has single-handedly costed them games. Situationally, just is a clown. He doesn't really know what the fuck he's doing, particularly last year in the AFC Championship game. Even this year in the big games, the first week against Kansas City, they didn't run Derrick Henry really at all. They gave him, 13 carries. They lost to the Raiders because of that, and we saw that yet again on Sunday against the Steelers. Their offensive play calling for me is too inconsistent to really trust the Baltimore Ravens. When you look at the NFC, it is wide open right now. When you look at some of the other top-tier contenders, the Niners completely fell off a cliff. They'll be lucky to even make the playoffs. The Vikings, I don't trust Sam Darnold. Am I forgetting anyone else major? Of course, you got Green Bay and Philly is there as well. Philly would probably be the biggest threat, I think, in the NFC. But how do you not view the Lions as the favorite right now? If you're someone who doesn't, I would love for you to comment down below. Because when I look around at all the other contending teams, they all have a fatal flaw. Even with the Eagles, like we just said, the Eagles are their biggest threat. But at the end of the day, I still don't trust Nick Sirianni. Whereas with the Lions, I can't really think of a legit criticism. They have a flawless roster. They have arguably the best coaching staff when you just factor in head coach and both the coordinators. You could argue is the best trio of coaches in the NFL right now for a combination standpoint. Obviously, the Chiefs would throw their hat in the ring there. But the Lions right now, stacked roster with that quarterback playing at that level with that many playmakers. They have to be the favorite right now. All right, so the next hot take is Bo Nix is the offensive rookie of the year. So with the first one, I couldn't agree more. This one's the flip opposite. I could not disagree more with this. Is Bo Nix having a good season? Absolutely. He's way better than what I thought he would be. The Broncos actually have a shot of being a wild card team this year, something I thought impossible. Bo Nix deserves his credit for sure. But There's this guy in Washington named Jaden Daniels that was earlier in the year a legitimate MVP candidate. And there was a couple weeks there where I think you could have argued he was actually the favorite to win MVP. Now, he's come back down to earth a little bit the past couple weeks, especially that game against the Eagles. But I think that really comes down to the fact that he plays a very physical style of football. He plays, he's asked to do a lot within the Commanders' offense. He's really just carrying that offense. Not to say that other guys aren't contributing on that team. They have a really good run game. They got Terry, but Jaden Daniels is doing a lot for that Commanders team. So for him to look a little beaten up and injured against the Eagles, I don't take a whole lot away from him. Let's compare their stats right now. When we look at Bo Nix, he has 2,275 passing yards. Jaden Daniels has 2,338 passing yards. So Jaden has thrown for more yards than Bo Nix. Let's take a look at their touchdown to interception ratios. Bo Nix has thrown 14 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, whereas Jaden has thrown 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. So that's also, of course, not factoring in Jaden's rush touchdowns, which, I should have written down here, but I think it's like 4 or 5. But yeah, Bo Nix has thrown more touchdowns. Jaden's thrown less picks. If you look at their completion percentages, Bo Nix is at 65.5. Jaden is at 68.7. So Jaden is more efficient than Bo Nix. You look at their QBR, which again, if you're not too familiar with QBR, it's kind of just like it factors in like all your stats and it gives you a grade where 0 obviously is just god-awful. 100 is the top tier. So if you have like a 50 QBR, you're considered a league average quarterback. A 75 would be considered like a Pro Bowl level quarterback. So looking at their QBRs, Bo Nix has a QBR of 53.5, so that's slightly above league average, whereas Jaden Daniels is at 67.8. So he's a lot closer to a Pro Bowler than Bo Nix has been this year. And then when you look at their team records, Denver 6-5, Washington 7-4. So Jaden Daniels has thrown for more yards. He's thrown less interceptions. He's more efficient. He has a better QBR, and his team has a better record. For me, this is not a close race. Jaden Daniels, for me, is still leaps and bounds ahead of this race than Bo Nix. And the next hot take is the Indianapolis Colts should have never benched Anthony Richardson. This take is completely reactionary, and I get it. That's kind of like the whole point of this is to like overstate stuff. They just beat the Jets 28-27. I get all that, but the Colts were 100% in the right to bench Anthony Richardson earlier this season, and I will continue to stand by that. Now, obviously, it turned out to be kind of a mess because Flacco was a disaster in the 2 games he started. They went 0-2. That game against the Vikings, they put up their lowest point total of the season under Flacco. So, and looking back in hindsight, you can really criticize that move and say it was a really dumb decision by Shane Steichen. But at the time, it was 100% the correct move to bench Anthony Richardson. Going back to that game where he just left because he was tired. Like, even his teammates came out and criticized him for that. A lot of, retired legends around the league were, publicly criticizing Anthony Richardson for that just being completely fucking unacceptable. For your team's battling, you're trying to win here, and you just quit on them because you're tired? Like, what's going on there? And you combine that with the fact that he was playing terrible. Like, up until that point in the season, Anthony Richardson was playing god-awful. And you had those couple games where Flacco actually came in for Anthony Richardson, most notably against my Steelers. Joe Flacco came in and beat my Steelers. The Steelers have only lost 2 games. One of those games was to the Colts because Flacco came in and carved us up, something Anthony Richardson could not do because he was playing bad up until that point. And we did a video about a week ago where I ranked the 5 worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Anthony Richardson was the 2nd worst quarterback on that list. When you look at his stats, they are just dreadfully awful. If you really want to learn more about how bad Anthony Richardson was to start off this year, go listen to my video, Top 5 Worst Quarterbacks in the NFL, because Anthony Richardson clearly made that list. He's one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks we've ever seen. Really in decades, we haven't seen a guy this inaccurate. So I completely disagree with this. It was 100% the correct decision to bench him. And hey, maybe it worked out because now that you put him back at starter, he just beat the Jets. Next up is a team we haven't really talked about a whole lot this year, and that's for obvious reasons. They were completely irrelevant when Tua Tagovailoa was out with the concussion. And I really, really am critical of this team because they just kind of stood pat whenever Tua got hurt. Like, no shit, it didn't work out whenever you rolled out there with Skylar Thompson and Huntley. Like, they're not NFL-level players. So ESPN's hot take here is the Dolphins can still make the playoffs. I disagree. I think they dug themselves far too deep in a hole when Tua was out. They should have went out there and got a guy like Ryan Tannehill. There were even rumblings that they were looking into getting Russell Wilson for a 7th-round pick. Looking back in hindsight, they obviously wish they would have done that. Really glad for my Steelers we didn't make that. That would have been god-awful. But so they're 4-6 right now. I wrote down their remaining schedule. They play the Patriots, the Packers, the Jets, the Texans, the Niners, the Browns, and then the Jets again. So realistically, I'm going to say that they're going to beat New England. They're going to sweep the Jets, and they can beat the Browns. So that's 4 wins right there. That's me being most nice, just saying they're going to beat those teams. That gets them to 8 wins. I don't realistically see them beating the Packers on Thanksgiving. I don't see them beating the Niners. I think that is a complete matchup nightmare for the Miami Dolphins playing them. And obviously, of course, it is a battle between Kyle Shanahan and his protege, Mike McDaniel. That's kind of a fun matchup. Even though Houston is struggling, I don't see that one. Houston, they got back on the right track yesterday after just embarrassing the Cowboys. So their most realistic path forward, I think, is they win those 4 games I talked about. They beat the Patriots, they sweep the Jets, and they beat the Browns. That's 8 wins. That's not good enough to get into the playoffs, especially when we take a look at the 3 teams currently in the wild card spots. You have the Chargers at 7-3. They're not going to fall off a cliff. You have the Ravens at 7-4. Even though I have my problems with the Ravens and their coaching staff, they ain't going anywhere with Lamar and Derrick Henry. And 3rd place is the Broncos at 6-5. That's your really only realistic chance, is if the Broncos just fall off a cliff, which I think is possible because Bo Nix has been inconsistent, especially to start off the year. And you'd also have to jump over the Colts, too. The Colts sitting at 5-6. So I just think they're too far out of it. They dug themselves too deep in a hole. They just need to start worrying about 2025 because I think this season is just too far out of grasp for the Miami Dolphins. Final hot take is kind of a weird one. It's just simply the fact that Matthew Stafford is still playing at an elite level and is underrated around the league. I disagree with this. I don't think Matthew Stafford's underrated. I think everyone kind of appreciates Stafford. We know what he is. When he's healthy and has his weapons, he's a very capable quarterback, elite quarterback, top 10 guy whenever he has his guys healthy. Taking a look at his numbers this year, he has 2,557 passing yards, 13-7 touchdown interception ratio, 66.5 completion percentage, and his QBR is 60.6. These are good numbers. They're not elite numbers, so I don't really understand the inclusion of Matt Stafford on here. We get it. He's a good quarterback. I think really the more interesting thing here, more so than Stafford individually, is the Rams. Are the Rams going to be able to climb this division? The NFC West has been the most bizarre division this year because the Niners, we all assumed were going to cruise to yet another division title. They have been all over the map this year. They've had moments of greatness. They've had moments of just being a train wreck. So I believe every other team, not the Cardinals, in this division right now is 5-5. The Rams are, the Seahawks, and the Niners. Then you have the Cardinals sitting atop at 6-4. It's just crazy to see the division play out this way. So I really think the Rams are the more intriguing thing as a whole, more so than just Stafford playing at a high level. We know Stafford is playing at a high level. And ever since he got his weapons back, they've gone back to being a really good team. They had a really impressive win against the Minnesota Vikings. I think that was a Thursday night football game just a couple weeks ago. That was a big statement win because up until that point, the Vikings looked unstoppable. The Rams got a big win there. So that's been ESPN's 5 hot takes coming out of Week 11. Definitely let me know your thoughts on all this down in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, please like and subscribe.